God-given liberties by any means necessary.
He's got a gun!
A new FBI next Tuesday, 8/7 Central on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Welcome. You're looking live inside the U.S. Capitol as President Biden is just moments away from his first State of the Union address, and our live coverage starts right now.
This is a CBS News special report. President Biden's State of the Union address and the Republican response.
Good evening. I'm Norah O'Donnell in the nation's capital, and President Biden is about to deliver his first State of the Union at a critical time in the country and around the world. You can see these live pictures from inside the House chamber, and you may notice there is a sea of blue and yellow that is in solidarity with Ukraine after Russia continues to bombard the country. There you see, of course, the Chief Justice John Roberts of the United States, as well as some of the other justices will be there tonight. Of course, the challenge for the president dealing with the rising inflation here at home, the third year of the pandemic. These are some of the biggest challenges of the Biden administration, and we are told he will address them. And of course, he will also use this occasion to push his pick for the Supreme Court, the federal appeals court judge, for the Supreme Court, I should say, the Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, because if she is confirmed, she would become the first black woman on the nation's highest court. Let's bring in CBS Morning's co-anchor, Gayle King. Gayle, I know you've been speaking to voters. What do people want to hear from the president?
Yeah, I'm so fascinated with looking at the chamber for just a second, Nora, to see people engaging without a mask. That's a little jarring to me. We all have to get used to that, I think. But in talking to voters, we talked to several voters in different places all around the country. Believe it or not, the one thing that came up time and time again, they just want the president to give it to us straight. They don't want talking points. They just want to hear the truth. And they use the U word. We want unity. People are so sick of the bickering and the bipartisanship, and they would like to figure out a way that we could come together. And Ukraine was on the top of many people's list. You know, 2 weeks ago, people in this country were not talking about Ukraine. I dare say a lot of people didn't even know where Ukraine is on the map, but now they know, and you've seen the pictures, and the pictures are haunting, and they want to hear, what are we going to do?
Nancy Cordes is our chief White House correspondent, and that is something new. The President of the United States is going to spend the first part of this speech talking about a foreign policy crisis.
Right, Gail. All those voters are going to get what they're looking for. The first 10 minutes of the speech, I'm told, will be all about Ukraine. The president is going to lay out a contrast between democracy and autocracy. He's going to lay out the specifics of the conflict so far, what the U.S. has done to help Ukraine, and he's going to walk through how we got here, how the U.S. brought other Western allies together. They are now all on the same page. He's going to use that word that you say so many voters want, Gail, unity.
Margaret Brennan is our anchor of Face the Nation and our chief foreign affairs correspondent. And Margaret, many of these lawmakers have been getting briefings from the Pentagon, from the intelligence agencies, and they've been told this is a war that could rage 10 to 20 years in Ukraine.
It could. 10 to 20 years is the projections that have been given by military leaders, but that would be ultimately a war that Russia would lose. In the near term, though, it's the Ukrainian civilians who are losing. They are the ones in bunkers right now, and they are the ones who are going to be suffering, particularly in the next 4 to 6 weeks, as that onslaught to capture some of Ukraine's largest cities continues. And we know the Russian military has been frustrated by the lack of progress, low morale, running short on gas, running short on food, because they thought it would be an easier fight. But while that is good news, as our David Martin has reported for, in terms of the Ukrainian military, it's not for civilians. We have heard complaints about civilian casualties and really trying to break the resistance. Vladimir Putin has been known to do this. He's done this to many presidents, whether it was in Syria or whether it was his first foray into Ukraine back in 2014. So this is a long conflict. President Biden knows it well because he was in office with the first invasion of Ukraine in 2014.
Looking at the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, as well as the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, seeing two women there that will flank the President of the United States. Quickly, Nancy, you broke some news just a short time ago.
That's right. In this speech, the president is going to announce that he is closing U.S. airspace to Russian aviation. This is a step that European allies took several days ago. The U.S. is now following suit.
We're also joined joined by John Dickerson. And John, the president has to confront some big issues, not only what's happening in Ukraine, but inflation.
That's right. We're talking about breaking news, last-minute edits to the speech. It reminds us that the presidency is a job of surprises. Tonight, the president will speak in the tradition started by Woodrow Wilson in 1913 to speak to the Congress. In that speech, Wilson said, "We are in an era of settled peace." 6 months later, he had the First World War. Jimmy Carter in 1980 in his State of the Union. And here we have an interruption.
Let's listen now to the president.
The President of the United States.
And that is the introduction of the president by the House Sergeant-at-Arms, Major General William Walker. And even for the President of the United States in this past years, it is unusual to see him without a mask in such close proximity to so many people. Also want to bring in our chief election and campaign correspondent, Robert Costa, who is on Capitol Hill. And Robert, how did the president prepare? What did his advisors say he wants to do with this speech?
I've been talking to the president's advisors all day, and they say this kind of moment is the full Biden, the Biden they've wanted to show for the last 2 years, but haven't been able to because of the pandemic. The person who has a tactile ability with people, whether they're in Congress or out in the country. And the mission here, they say tonight, is to settle people, not only abroad, but at home, that he feels the pain of voters out there on inflation, on the economy, about their frustrations with the pandemic. This is about pivoting toward the midterms when it comes to politics.
Robert Costa, thank you. And we just saw the president. The other woman there is Karen Gibson. She is the Senate Sergeant of Arms, introducing and essentially escorting the president as he greets the Chief Justice, as well as other members of the Supreme Court. The State of the Union, one of the rare chances that the president has to address the entire nation for a sustained period, and the Republicans also have a response tonight from Iowa's Governor Kim Reynolds.
This speech feels different to me tonight because I believe so many people, when I was coming here from New York, just randomly talking to people in the airport, people said, "I never watch a State of the Union. I'm going to watch tonight," because there is so much concern about what's happening in Ukraine and in this country.
State of the world.
Yes, is watching.
Let's bring in our Ed O'Keefe, who's at the White House as we watch the president. Ed, what are you learning about what we'll hear from the president?
Nora, a big focus, of course, as you said, on Ukraine. The first few minutes expected to focus on that. He'll call out Vladimir Putin, saying his war in Ukraine was premeditated and unprovoked.
I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States.
We pause there for the speaker. He will also discuss inflation, obviously a big concern for most Americans as inflation continues to rise. But the real observation I think we all have is he's getting to shake hands and slap backs, something he didn't get to do last year. As aides have described it, we should see what they hope for, at least, the full Biden tonight.
And let's listen in now to hear the applause there in the House chamber.
Thank you, General.
There's some members sitting in the gallery, but you can see just limited social distancing tonight.
70% of the country now in an area of low transmission, according to the CDC.
Thank you so much.
It's hard to think, and there probably isn't another president who's given the speech who's been in the audience so many times.
Madam Vice President, our First Lady and Second Gentleman, members of Congress and the Cabinet, Justice of the Supreme Court, my fellow Americans. Last year, COVID-19 kept us apart. This year, we're finally together again. Tonight, we meet as Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, but most importantly, as Americans, with the duty to one another, to America, to the American people, to the Constitution, and an unwavering resolve that freedom will always triumph over tyranny. Thank you. 6 days ago, Russia's Vladimir Putin sought to shake the very foundations of the free world, thinking he could make it bend to his menacing ways. But he badly miscalculated. He thought he could roll into Ukraine and the world would roll over. Instead, he met with a wall of strength he never anticipated or imagined. He met the Ukrainian people. And President Zelensky, to every Ukrainian, their fearlessness, their courage, their determination literally inspires the world. Groups of citizens blocking tanks with their bodies, everyone from students to retirees to teachers, turned soldiers defending their homeland. And in this struggle, President Zelensky said in his speech to the European Parliament, "Light will win over darkness." The Ukrainian ambassador to the United States is here tonight, sitting with the First Lady. Let each of us, if you're able to stand and send an unmistakable signal to the world of Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. She's bright, she's strong, she's resolved. Yes, we, the United States of America, stand with the Ukrainian people. Throughout our history, we've learned this lesson. When dictators do not pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos. They keep moving, and the cost, the threats to America and America to the world keeps rising. That's why the NATO alliance was created, to secure peace and stability in Europe after World War II. The United States is a member, along with 29 other nations. It matters. American diplomacy matters. American resolve matters. Putin's latest attack on Ukraine was premeditated and totally unprovoked. He rejected repeated efforts at diplomacy. He thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond. He thought he could divide us at home, in this chamber, in this nation. He thought he could divide us in Europe as well. But Putin was wrong. We are ready. We are united, and that's what we did. We stayed united. We prepared extensively and carefully. We spent months building coalitions of other freedom-loving nations in Europe and the Americas, from America to the Asian and African continents, to confront Putin. Like many of you, I spent countless hours unifying our European allies. We shared with the world in advance what we knew Putin was planning and precisely how he would try to falsify and justify his aggression. We countered Russia's lies with the truth. And now that he's acted, the free world is holding him accountable, along with 27 members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and many others. Even Switzerland are inflicting pain on Russia and supporting the people of Ukraine. Putin is now isolated from the world more than he has ever been. Together, along with our allies, we are right now enforcing powerful economic sanctions. We're cutting off Russia's largest banks in the international financial system, preventing Russia's central bank from defending the Russian ruble, making Putin's $630 billion war fund worthless. We're choking Russia's access. We're choking Russia's access to technology that will sap its economic strength and weaken its military for years to come. Tonight, I say to the Russian oligarchs and the corrupt leaders who bilked billions of dollars off this violent regime, no more. The United States, I mean it. The United States Department of Justice is assembling a dedicated task force to go after the crimes of the Russian oligarchs. We're joining with European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private jets. We're coming for your ill-begotten gains. And tonight, I'm announcing that we will join our allies in closing off American airspace to all Russian flights, further isolating Russia and adding additional squeeze on their economy. He has no idea what's coming. The ruble has already lost 30% of its value. The Russian stock market has lost 40% of its value, and trading remains suspended. The Russian economy is reeling, and Putin alone is the one to blame. Together with our allies, we're providing support to the Ukrainians in their fight for freedom. Military assistance, economic assistance, humanitarian assistance. We're giving more than $1 billion of direct assistance to Ukraine, and will continue to aid the Ukrainian people as they defend their country and help ease their suffering. But let me be clear, our forces are not engaged and will not engage in the conflict with Russian forces in Ukraine. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies in the event that Putin decides to keep moving west. For that purpose, we have mobilized American ground forces, air squadrons, ship deployments to protect NATO countries including Poland, Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And as I've made crystal clear, the United States and our allies will defend every inch of territory that is NATO territory with the full force of our collective power. Every single inch. And we're clear-eyed. The Ukrainians are fighting back with pure courage. But the next few days, weeks, and months will be hard on them. Putin has unleashed violence and chaos, but while he may make gains on the battlefield, he'll pay a continuing high price over the long run. And a pound of Ukrainian people, the proud, proud people, pound for pound, ready to fight with every inch of energy they have. They've known 30 years of independence, have repeatedly shown that they will not tolerate anyone who tries to take their country backwards. To all Americans, I'll be honest with you, as I always promised I would be. A Russian dictator invading a foreign country has cost around the world. And I'm taking robust action to make sure the pain of our sanctions is targeted at the Russian economy, and that we use every tool at our disposal to protect American businesses and consumers. Tonight, I can announce the United States has worked with 30 other countries to release 60 million barrels of oil from reserves around the world. America will lead that effort, releasing 30 million barrels of our own strategic petroleum reserve. And we stand ready to do more if necessary, united with our allies. These steps will help blunt gas prices here at home, but I know news about what's happening can seem alarming to all Americans. But I want you to know we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. When the history of this era is written, Putin's war in Ukraine will have left Russia weaker and the rest of the world stronger. While it shouldn't have taken something so terrible for people around the world to see what's at stake, now everyone sees it clearly. We see the unity among leaders of nations, a more unified Europe, a more unified West. We see unity among the people who are gathering in cities and large crowds around the world, even in Russia, to demonstrate their support for the people of Ukraine. In the battle between democracy and autocracies, democracies are rising to the moment. and the world is clearly choosing the side of peace and security. This is the real test, and it's going to take time. So let us continue to draw inspiration from the iron will of the Ukrainian people. To our fellow Ukrainian Americans who forged the deep bond that connects our two nations, we stand with you. We stand with you. Putin may circle Kyiv with tanks, but he'll never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people. He'll never extinguish their love of freedom, and he will never weaken the resolve of the free world. We meet tonight in an America that has lived through two of the hardest years this nation has ever faced. The pandemic has been punishing, and so many families are living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to keep up with the rising cost of food, gas, housing, and so much more. I understand, like many of you did. My dad had to leave his home in Scranton, Pennsylvania to find work. So like many of you, I grew up in a family when the price of food went up, it was felt throughout the family. It had an impact. That's when one of the first things I did as president was fight to pass the American Rescue Plan. Because people were hurting. We needed to act, and we did. Few pieces of legislation have done more at a critical moment in our history to lift us out of a crisis. It fueled our efforts to vaccinate the nation and combat COVID-19. Delivered immediate economic relief to tens of millions of Americans. It helped put food on the table. Remember those long lines of cars waiting for hours just to get a box of food put in their trunk. It cut the cost of health care insurance. And as my dad used to say, it gave the people just a little bit of breathing room. Unlike the $2 trillion tax cut passed in the previous administration that benefited the top 1% of Americans, the American Rescue Plan helped working people and left no one behind. Folks, and it worked. It worked. It worked. We created jobs, lots of jobs. In fact, our economy created over 6.5 million new jobs just last year. More jobs in 1 year than ever before in the history of the United States of America. The economy grew at a rate of 5.7 last year, the strongest growth rate in 40 years. And the first step in bringing fundamental change to our economy that hasn't worked for working people in this nation for too long. For the past 40 years, we were told that tax break for those at the top and benefits would trickle down and everyone would benefit. But that trickle-down theory led to a weaker economic growth, lower wages, bigger deficits, and a widening gap between the top and everyone else in nearly a century. Look, Vice President Harris and I ran for office, and I realize we have fundamental disagreements on this, but ran for office with a new economic vision for America. Invest in America, educate Americans, grow the workforce, build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down, because we know when the middle class grows, the poor have a way up and the wealthy do very well. America used to have the best roads, bridges, and airports on earth. And now our infrastructure is ranked 13th in the world. We won't be able to compete for the jobs of the 21st century if we don't fix it. That's why it was so important to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I thank my Republican friends who joined to invest and rebuild America, the single biggest investment in history. It was a bipartisan effort, and I want to thank the members of both parties who worked to make it happen. We're done talking about infrastructure weeks. We're now talking about an infrastructure decade. And look, It's going to transform America, to put us on a path to win the economic competition of the 21st century that we face with the rest of the world, particularly China. I've told Xi Jinping it's never been a good bet to bet against the American people. We'll create good jobs for millions of Americans, modernizing roads, airports, ports, waterways, all across America. And we'll do it to withstand the devastating effects of climate change and promote environmental justice. We'll build a national network of 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. Begin to replace the poisonous lead pipes so every child, every American has clean water to drink at home and at school. We're going to provide affordable, high-speed internet for every American, rural, suburban, urban, and tribal communities. 4,000 projects have already been announced. Many of you have announced them in your districts. And tonight, I'm announcing that this year, we will start fixing over 65,000 miles of highway and 1,500 bridges in disrepair. And folks, when we use taxpayers' dollars to rebuild America, we're going to do it by buying America. Buy American products. Support American jobs. The federal government spends about $600 billion a year to keep this country safe and secure. There's been a law on the books for almost a century to make sure taxpayers' dollars support American jobs and businesses. Every administration, Democrat and Republican, says they'll do it, but we're actually doing it. We'll buy America to make sure everything from the deck of an aircraft carrier to the steel on highway guardrails is made in America from beginning to end. All of it. All of it. But folks, to compete for the jobs of the future, we also need a level playing field with China and other competitors. That's why it's so important to pass the Bipartisan Innovation Act sitting in Congress that will make record investments in emerging technologies and American manufacturing. We used to invest almost 2% of our GDP in research and development. We don't now. China is. Let me give you one example why it's so important to pass. If you travel 20 miles east of Columbus, Ohio, you'll find 1,000 empty acres of land. It won't look like much, but if you stop and look closely, you'll see a field of dreams, the ground on which America's future will be built. That's where Intel, the American company that helped build Silicon Valley, is going to build a $20 billion semiconductor megasite. Up to 8 state-of-the-art factories in one place. 10,000 new jobs. And in those factories, the average job about $135,000 a year. Some of the most sophisticated manufacturing in the world to make computer chips the size of a fingertip that power the world in everyday lives. From smartphones, technology, the internet, technology is yet to be invented. But that's just the beginning. Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger, who is here tonight, I don't know where Pat is. Pat, there you go. Pat, stand up. Pat came to see me, and he told me they're ready to increase their investment from $20 billion to $100 billion. That would be the biggest investment in manufacturing in American history. And all they're waiting for is for you to pass this bill. So let's not wait any longer. Send it to my desk. I'll sign it. And we'll really take off in a big way. And folks, Intel is not alone. There's something happening in America. Just look around and you'll see an amazing story. the rebirth of pride that comes from stamping products made in America, the revitalization of American manufacturing. Companies are choosing to build new factories here when just a few years ago they would have gone overseas. That's what's happening. Ford is investing $11 billion in electric vehicles, creating 11,000 jobs across the country. GM is making the largest investment in its history, $7 billion to build electric vehicles, creating 4,000 jobs in Michigan. All told, 369,000 new manufacturing jobs were created in America last year alone. Folks, powered by people I've met like JoJo Burgess from generations of union steelworkers in Pittsburgh, who's here with us tonight. Where are you, JoJo? There you go. Thanks, buddy. As Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown says, Sherrod Brown says it's time to bury the label Rust Belt. It's time to see what used to be called the Rust Belt become the home of a significant resurgence of manufacturing. And with all the bright spots in our economy, record job growth, higher wages, too many families are struggling to keep up with their bills. Inflation is robbing them of gains they thought otherwise they would be able to feel. I get it. That's why my top priority is getting prices under control. Look, our economy roared back faster than almost anyone predicted. But the pandemic meant that businesses had a hard time hiring enough people because of the pandemic to keep up production in their factories. So you didn't have people making those beams that went into buildings because they were out. The factory was closed. The panic also disrupted the global supply chain. Factories close. When that happens, it takes longer to make goods and get them to the warehouses, to the stores, and prices go up.